Welcome back to our debate at Bailey Hall in Broward College in Davie. We want to ask the audience here at Bailey Hall to please hold their applause so we can get as many questions in as possible. Right now, I want to toss it over to my colleague at CBS 4, anchor Erica Sargent, who is with our social media panel. Erica.
Elliot, thank you. I am Erica Sargent, and hundreds of you are interacting with us on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag FLGovDebate. And right now, the three top trending topics on social media are 1, economy and jobs, 2, the cost of higher education, and the third trending topic is climate change and its impact on Florida. So now we want to turn back to our social media panel, and I'm going to turn it over to Patricia Mazzei with the Miami Herald. So Patricia, with all that we're seeing on Facebook and Twitter, what is the question that you now have for Governor Christ?
Governor Christ, it seems like a lot of viewers want to know how it is that you think, how you can solve problems, both you and Governor Scott. So my question is, when science is at odds with religion, when you're faced with a question where science is not consistent with your faith, how do you deal with that problem? If somebody asks you, is the Earth 4.5 billion years old or 6,000 years old, what do you say?
Well, my religion's very important to me. I have a very deep faith in God, and every morning I read the Bible. It's important to keep centered and keep focused on that. And so I take it very seriously, and I also try to utilize science and learn as much as I can. On the issue of climate change, it's pretty clear to me that man is contributing to this problem. We're in South Florida tonight, and it seems to me that in South Florida, as well as the rest of the state, we're really ground zero for this issue. Now, my opponent doesn't believe in it or says he's not a scientist or whatever. But I believe it's happening, and I think we have an obligation to try to stop it. It's why I held climate change summits in the past and signed executive orders to reduce emissions to address it. I mean, if you're on Miami Beach tonight and you go to Alton Road, you'll find that many days it is actually flooding when it's not raining. That tells you all you need to know. We need to address it.
Governor Scott.
Well, I grew up in the Methodist Church. My mom made sure I went to church a lot. My mom and my grandmother were devout Christians. Jesus Christ became my Savior at a very young age. I read the Bible. I like to listen to sermons. And my faith is very important to me, and I know it's very important to my family, to my wife. Now, when I think about problems, I think about solutions. So let's take global warming. What we've done since I got elected is focus on the solution. We've spent $350 million to deal with sea level rise. We spent $100 million to deal with protecting our coral reefs. We've increased the funding by 45% for beach renourishment, on top of all the other things, our springs, trying to move water south, the $880 million we put into the Everglades. But my faith is very important to me. I believe in it. But I'm also going to try to solve any problems I see need to be solved.
Governor Christ, your rebuttal?
Sure. I really don't have a rebuttal to that. I mean, you know, we all have the right to feel how we feel about our Creator, and I respect that different people may have a different point of view. For me, I happen to be a Methodist too. Maybe it's the only thing we agree on tonight, Rick. But, you know, faith is very important. Science is important too. My father happens to be a medical doctor, and so is one of my 3 sisters, a medical doctor. So I think the combination of science is important, and the core beliefs of your religion are more significant than anything.
Thank you, Governor Christ. Rosemary?
Governor Scott, you say you're against discrimination, but the courts have said Florida's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional because it is discriminatory. Do you think the ban is discriminatory?
Well, let's think about where we are. None of us believe in discrimination. I clearly don't believe in any discrimination. In 2008, part of our democratic process, led by Charlie, there was a constitutional amendment passed that said marriage would be between a man and a woman. While I believe in traditional marriage, we've got to understand people have different views. It's going through the court system. My understanding is going to the directly to the Supreme Court. Whatever the Supreme Court decides, they'll decide what the law in Florida is. I will abide by that law. But what's important to me is we need to understand people have different views. We shouldn't have ill will because people have different views. But we have to remember all this was started with Charlie as governor.
Governor Scott, I'm not sure I got an answer to the question.
Sure.
I'm not sure I got an answer to the question. Do you believe the ban is discriminatory?
I don't believe in discrimination, but look, I can tell you, I don't believe in discrimination. I believe in traditional marriage. The court's going to decide. This is a decision for the courts, and they'll ultimately make the decision.
Governor Christ?
I don't believe in discrimination either, and I don't believe in it so much that I believe that gay couples should have the right to marry. And I think the best way to capture this, Rosemary, you tried to get an answer, it's difficult, but I think the best way to capture this is to understand that who is it for us to tell other people who to love, and what is it in our right to tell other people who to marry? I think we've come to a place in American society, and certainly I think Florida is leading the way with the decisions that have been made. This is the right thing to do. We need to move forward.
So, Charlie just told you his beliefs today, but you have to remember when he gave an interview about this issue before, he said he took his prior positions for political expediency, meaning as a way to win office. We don't actually know what Charlie believes on this issue because he's taken every side of this this issue.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Frank Denton.
Governor Christ, education research shows that of all the factors that affect a child's academic success, 2/3 of them are outside the school, mostly in the family and in the community. Especially in poor communities, success in school can be undercut by poor parenting or some other part of unhealthy home life. Should the state have a role in this crucial part of educating our children? And if so, what should it be?
The state definitely should. The state always has. I mean, when I went to high school, I played high school football. It was an after-school program, if you will. You know, we had band, we had music, arts, sports, and one of the things that really saddened me when Governor Scott cut education funding by $1.3 billion his first year is that some entire schools had to be shut down. After-school programs across the state had to be mothballed. In my home county of Pinellas, AP classes had to grow their class size by almost 30%. That is not the right thing to do to help a community, to help a school, or to help a child. And so I think we have to do, as I said at the outset, reinvest in education because of the dramatic cuts that Rick Scott has brought about. Those are the facts. They're stubborn things, but we need to move forward.
Governor Christ, that's investing in the schools. The question was about, does the state have a responsibility with family life, teaching people how to be better parents, preparing kids to go to school so that they can perform?
Well, I think the best way to do that is to try to lead by example. Any of us do that in our communities. You know, whether you're working with the Boy Scouts or you're working with whatever the organization might be, I think it's important that all of us play a role in that, whether it's the state or the private sector.
Thank you, Governor Christ. Governor Scott?
Well, first off, I believe in parental rights. I was blessed that I have a mom that was willing to go through a painful divorce while she was pregnant with me because she was married to an abusive man. But I believe that unless we see problems, we need to give parents the opportunity to raise their children. Everybody has different goals for their children. They don't exactly do exactly what we think. But Ann and I had goals for our daughters, and I know our daughters have goals, and their husbands have goals for our grandchildren. I think we need to leave as much parenting as we can to parents. And at school, our job is to educate them to, so they're going to be solid citizens and they can have great careers. But I believe in parental rights.
All right, gentlemen, can we move on to the next question? Governor Scott, the next question is to you. Watching everything that evolved around the shooting death of Trayvon Martin and the trial of George Zimmerman, do you think justice was served in that case?
Well, I'll tell you, here's what I did, and I first sat down with Trayvon's parents, Sabrina and Tracy. I wanted to make sure they felt comfortable that law enforcement was going to do a proper investigation. Then I sat down with them when I brought in the special prosecutor, Angela Corey, to try to make sure they were comfortable that justice would be served. It went through the system. I respect the system we have in our state. I want to really thank Trayvon Martin's parents because some of the issues that they've had in Missouri we didn't have here, and a lot of it was because of his parents. I mean, my heart goes out to them. I can't imagine losing a child, a grandchild. But I thank Trayvon's parents, Sabrina and Tracy, because they did a great job making sure we didn't have the problems that we had in Missouri.
Governor Christ, was justice served in that case?
It's hard to say. Neither of us were on the jury. So we don't know the facts as well as the jury in that case know the facts. I used to be the Attorney General, and I understand that judging from afar is not a very good idea. What I do know, though, is this stand your ground law needs to be fixed. It's a problem. I know that we have the right to defend ourselves. I think everybody believes in that American premise, and it's the right thing to do to be able to defend yourself and your property. But when it gets to the point and you've got a statute on the books that allows the initiator of an instigation to end up killing another human being after they started the incident, there is something fundamentally flawed with that law. I believe that we can protect the right to defend yourself and make sure that we don't have laws on the books that end up with the tragic death of Trayvon Martin.
Let me just follow up. Governor, would you change the stand your ground law?
No, I would not change the law. I think that death is a tragic death, but I believe in the right to defend yourself. I mean, I can't imagine losing a child like that. But I've talked to sheriffs and police chiefs. 40 sheriffs have endorsed me. Police Chiefs Association has, and I stand with them that we need to have the existing law in place.
Thank you, Governor. Rosemary.
Governor Christ, Florida is the Sunshine State, yet we're not in the top 10 for solar power development. Georgia installed more solar power last year than Florida's installed in the past 3 years. Why isn't Florida aspiring to be a leader in solar energy?
Florida should be. We should be the global leader in solar energy development. My goodness, we're the Sunshine State. It doesn't make any sense not to do so. So you have to ask, why aren't we doing that? We started doing that during my administration between 2007 and 2011. Unfortunately, with Rick Scott's administration, they are the friends of the utility industry. They are funding his very campaign. And they have laws on the books that make it incredibly difficult for companies that want to develop solar energy in Florida, in the Sunshine State, to be able to do so. So how do you fix it? You elect a different governor who believes in solar energy, believes in wind, believes in renewables, believes in these cleaner energy sources, is not, beholden to the utility companies that keep jacking up your bills like Duke and FP&L. It's just wrong. You need to have a governor who's on your side, who has a bright idea, no pun intended, about solar energy in the Sunshine State, because it's simply the right thing to do.
Governor Scott?
Well, first off, Charlie doesn't worry about the facts. While he was governor, utility costs went up 30%. They went from below the national average to above the national average. Since I got elected, utility rates have come down 11%. Now we're below the national average. Now, with regard to solar, we need to have an attitude that we want everything, but it's got to be reliable and it's got to be cost effective. If Charlie had his way, we'd go the path of California. What's the path of California? It's a 40% increase in electricity for our residents. If the average person in our state pays right now about $208 in electricity a month, that would be an $80 increase. So Charlie can talk all these things he'd like to do, but it's going to come out of your pocket. A 40% increase because he wants to do, and remember, when he was there, a 30% increase in utility cost.
Let's get back to the truth. The increase in your utility bills has happened under the last 4 years. You at home watching tonight know if your bills are going up under Rick Scott. I know mine is, and I'm sure yours probably is too. You also know that your property insurance bills are going up under Rick Scott. You may not know this. He actually signed into law recently a law that says that the Office of Insurance Regulation cannot regulate insurance. Does that make sense to anybody? Well, it does to the insurance companies.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
It's not true.
Oh, it's true.
So here's the facts. Charlie's Obamacare law has the federal government, HHS, deciding all the rates for those plans. Why would the state do the exact same thing? They wouldn't do the same thing. They have no power to do the same thing. HHS is deciding all those rates. And Charlie signed legislation that allowed companies like Duke to pass on costs for power plants that were never built.
That's not true.
I stopped.
That was Jeb Bush.
Go. You can go to Facts for Florida. You can go to Facts for Florida, and they'll explain, and they'll show you the bill that Charlie signed.
Denton has the next question for Governor Scott.
Governor Scott, Florida is seeing a revolt over high-stakes testing in our schools. The federal government's played something of a role, but Florida lawmakers have added even more tests and tied them to teacher pay. Are all these tests needed to preparing our kids for the future?
Sure. You know, I think what we all believe in is we all want to make sure children get a great education, and we all know that measurement works. It does work, but people are concerned about how much testing we have. The latest concern is how much the federal government's involved. There's in a lot of areas, including education. So about a little over a year ago, I said the federal government, we're not going to use the federal assessment standards, PARC. We worked on legislation, got it passed that said the federal government's not going to data mine our students. On top of that, we said that the curriculum decisions would be made at the local level. Then we moved to Florida standards. And this next year, what I'm going to do is go around and look at all the standards we have, because some of the standards are at the state and some of the standards are at the district, to just make sure everybody knows what the standards are, who's doing them, and do we have the right standards.
Governor Crest.
There's way too much testing in our schools today. There is. And the reason that is that Rick Scott signed a bill his first year in office that I had vetoed. I vetoed that bill because it put too much of an emphasis on teaching to the test. These learning centers have now become testing centers, our schools. And that's not right, and it's not fair to our children. We need to have somebody like me as governor who served as education commissioner and understands these issues. Under Rick Scott, we have had 4 education commissioners in 4 years. We've got to get our education system back on track. We need somebody who understands it, who actually went to our public schools. I'll do that. I'll make sure it's funded properly. We got to get it right.
So let's look at the results. Step 1, our 4th graders are number 2 in the world in reading. Our 4th and 8th graders had the highest student achievement gains in the last 3 years of any large state in the country. Hispanic students have some of the highest graduation rates in the United States. The overall graduation rates for high schools are up, I think, around 4 or 5% since I got elected. Our African-American students had the highest student achievement gains of any state last year. The National Council for Teacher Quality, 2 surveys in a row, says Florida has the highest quality teachers in the country. Now, when Charlie was governor, 3,000 teachers got laid off, including Inca Silver, a teacher that got laid off in 2008 because of Charlie's cuts in education. She called his office, and he wouldn't even return a phone call.
Thank you, Governor Scott. I have a question for Governor Crist now. Governor Crist, under your administration and under Governor Scott's administration, scores of children have died under the supervision of the Department of Children and Families. Why are we unable to keep kids safe?
It's tragic. You're talking about the challenges and the difficulties at the Department of Children and Families. And even if one child dies, it's a tragedy, and it's awful. But this is an area where I decided to reach across the aisle. When I got elected governor in 2006, I reached out to Bob Butterworth, a former attorney general. You know, one of the smartest things you can do as a leader is to surround yourself with the best and the brightest. Bob Butterworth was great, and then he was followed by George Sheldon, who's running for attorney general, did a tremendous job behind him. What's important is to be transparent, though. There's a story in the paper today about a lack of transparency on this issue from Rick Scott's administration. And I can't understand that. Maybe he'll talk about it in the rebuttal. But what is important is you have to be clear, you have to be open, or you can't fix the problems to begin with. One of the first questions I got from Bob Butterworth when he was secretary, when we had a challenge with a child very early in the administration, he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Call a press conference. Let's shine a light on it."
Thank you, Governor.
We can't fix it unless we know
Governor
about
Scott.
Sure. It's tragic. Right after the Bell shootings, I went and met with the survivors of that family, and your heart goes out to them. We have grandkids. We don't want anything to happen to our children. So here's what we did. When I came in, the first thing we did is we increased the pay for our child protective investigators. Charlie had cut the funding for the child protective investigators. Then we also brought in the Casey Foundation to review what we were doing. They made some recommendations. This last year, I went to the legislature and asked for more child protective investigators, and now we have 270 more. And they're going to be able to spend more time per family to hopefully stop this. But here's the positive. It's the number of child deaths has come down since Charlie was governor. It's not zero. I wish it was zero because every child death is a tragedy.
Governor Scott, thank you. Governor Scott, Governor Christ, now we're going to have a lightning round with some shorter questions. You have 20 seconds to answer the question. I'll ask you, Governor Christ, then I'll ask Governor Scott a different question. And the first question I want to ask you, Governor Christ, is why did you insist on bringing a fan here when your campaign knew this would be a contentious issue?
Why not? You know, is there anything wrong with being comfortable? I don't think there is. Having compassion with other people, we did fine. Thank you, Elliot.
And Governor Scott, why the delay in coming out over a fan?
Well, I waited until we figured out if he was going to show up. He said he wasn't going to come to the. He said he was going to come to the debate. So why come out until he's ready?
Governor Scott, why do you keep your assets in a blind trust?
Sure. The reason is so I don't have a conflict. Charlie Crist did a grand jury when he was governor and said that the right thing to do was do what Jeb Bush did and Alex Sink did. Now, Charlie didn't do it. Put your assets in a blind trust so you don't have a conflict. So I don't know what assets they have. The third party runs those assets, and that's what I've done.
Governor Crist, say something nice about Governor Scott.
I'm happy to. I want to commend him on how he has handled the Ebola situation. I want to commend him. It's better to be prepared than panic, really.
You had an extra 7 seconds. Governor Scott, say something nice about Governor Crist.
That was pretty nice of him.
Okay. On that note, the lightning round is over. We were short on time. We started late, gentlemen. That concludes the question and answer portion of this debate. The candidates will now have 20 seconds for, we'll have 1 minute for closing arguments. And Governor Crist will go first, and that was determined by a coin toss. 1 minute for your closing statement, Governor.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank people watching at home tonight. You've seen the differences between Rick Scott and myself. I care about education. I grew up in this state, and I love Florida. I want to do everything I can to make sure that the middle class has an opportunity to do better than you're doing under Governor Scott. I want to make sure that we invest in Florida businesses first, that they have a chance to employ more people instead of bringing big corporations from outside our state. And I want to make sure that we protect our beautiful environment. I love the water, and I love being out on the water in Tampa Bay in my home. And I want to make sure for future generations they have the opportunity to enjoy the beauty of this great state. I'm asking for your vote. I would appreciate it, whether you vote by mail, you vote early, or you vote on November 4th. God bless you, and God bless our Florida.
Governor Scott.
I want to thanking my wife for standing by me through thick and thin. My mom's watching from heaven. I want to thank her for being willing to divorce an abusive husband. I want to thank my daughters and for being such great members of our family. 4 years ago, my mom was embarrassingly calling me a good boy, and I ran on a campaign to get our state back to work. 700,000 jobs over 7 years. We're on a roll. It's an honor being your governor. It's a great honor. I would love to get your vote. I'll tell you, I'll do everything I can to make sure this is the state that you can live your version of the American dream. Es un honor ser su gobernador. Le pido su voto para seguir trabajando para hacer de la Florida el mejor lugar para vivir el sueño americano. Sigamos trabajando. Muchas gracias. Great to be here.
Governor Scott, thank you very much. Governor Christ, thank you very much. That concludes our debate. Don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 4th. Governor Scott, thank you. Thank you very much, Governor.
Decision 2014, Before You Vote, has been brought to you by Broward College, providing exceptional programs and resources to prepare students for high-demand careers, by Leadership Florida, and by the Florida Press Association, with underwriting by the Florida League of Cities, the Florida Association of Insurance Agents, the Florida Credit Union Association, AARP Florida, and the Claude Pepper Foundation.